Hey everyone, welcome to another 1 hour of the shared housing class for real estate investors. Today, we are so lucky that we have JulieAnn Ferraro here with us. This is going to be a very special class that you will not get anywhere else. I'm going to go ahead and let JulieAnn introduce herself and her background, and then we're just going to get into all the nitty-gritty on sober living, veterans court, mental health court, a little bit about grants, although we're going to cover grants more in detail later on. But really, we want to be talking about all the things that you might not know when you go down this path of shared housing and homelessness. So without further ado, JulieAnn, please take over and tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, Kirsten, for having me. Yes, my name is JulieAnn Ferraro. I am 27 years plus in law enforcement. I also have my own rentals, and I've become a committee member here at Katie's House Foundation. So a little bit of my background on the law enforcement side is I spent a lot of time on patrol, but recently after I retired, I am a detective. And part of my job at that department is that I became one of the first law enforcement liaisons for the drug court, mental health court, and veterans court. Now, I can say that it is a requirement for them to have some type of liaison on there for law enforcement because they do want these participants in the court to have the contact with the police outside of just being arrested. So that was the idea behind it. And in Cook County, Illinois, where I am a certified law enforcement officer, that's where I go and participate in these courts. And I'm in the 3rd district. So I have been doing this for over a year now. And I'm ready for any of your questions, Kirsten.
Okay, well, so when I first got into shared housing, some things that were not taught to me that were really important were one around crime and looking at crime where these houses are, which we will do something separately on. However, I do want to ask you, what are the things that are an absolute hard no when you start down this path? Maybe from what you see, would that be, people want to pick up a house that's in the most seedy neighborhood sometimes because it's the best price. And would you discourage people from doing that for shared housing?
I mean, I think in our course here, we're going to have people that already are landlords like ourselves. And we're already either going to have that property or we're in the position to acquire more properties easily. So I would say that one of the things that I would look at is, obviously when we buy investment properties, we're buying A, B, C, or D. When we're talking about sober housing, we're talking about drug court. Even a lot of times it's going to bleed over. If it's veterans court, they might have a drug alcohol problem too. So sometimes in my experience, I'll be in veterans court, but then in the next week when I go to drug court, that veteran is also being considered for the drug court because they have an alcohol problem or drug problem. So I always tell people, obviously when you're in that environment and you're already addicted or you're having an alcohol problem, it's easier to walk out the front door of this shared housing and obtain more drugs or obtain more alcohol in certain areas. So when we look at A, B, C, and D, obviously A being the best, D being the worst for those people that aren't familiar with what I'm talking about. The D properties are the ones that I'm going to tell you, you probably aren't going to have success in it. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to have a lot more problems than you bargained for. And Kirsten and I have had these conversations before because it comes down to things just as simple as it's hard to get the garbage picked up in those neighborhoods. And how can you have a clean, good environment for someone that's trying to get back on their feet when you can't even get the garbage picked up in the front, of the house? So, when we talk about neighborhoods and locations, it doesn't have to be an A neighborhood. It doesn't have to be a B. It can be a C. It just needs to be evaluated in the best course to have some essential things available to them in that neighborhood that they can easily access. And that would mean things like grocery stores, bus stops, but within walking distance. We're not talking necessarily right out front, but those are the kind of things that I would say to give somebody the best start off point to answer your question.
Okay. I mean, let's really go through that and dive into it, because I know people who go down this path go with their heart and they're really excited to get started. And if they're a real estate investor and they have a property and also they're A-type, they think, I can make this work. This property is going to work. And what we're trying to tell you right now is not every property is going to be a cash flow property. And so we're trying to help you. That way you can keep the people on track who are living inside that particular boutique shelter. And what that means is that maybe there's a house that you want to designate for sober living or drug court, and that house should be better used for maybe human trafficking victims who have never had anything to personally do with drugs. They weren't selling drugs, and they weren't using drugs. They're not affiliated with the drug court system. And so that's what we're touching on as far as making sure that the house, the location of the house, which is what we talked a lot about in the first day of this and the first 4 hours, is, the house itself, the area. And I want to talk now about the populations. So I brought up here a few populations. I asked you in the very first class, all of the students who are watching, the homework was to pick one population who you want to work with. That's going to always be important. People are going to offer you money to house other populations. I would say, and I'm going to throw this back to Julie, that picking one for at least 1 year would probably be the better way to go so you can get some traction. Would you agree, Julie?
Yes, I would definitely agree. Now, I did premise a little bit before that sometimes there will be a class, like I see the top one is veterans. There may be, they may fall into a little bit of another category too, which is good, but just to be able to focus and get that, do one thing and do it good.
Yeah. So that's why you should pick your population, and that way you can start creating a network. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not even going to happen in the first month. This is not like setting up a vacant rental and then putting it up on Craigslist and thinking that if you price it, the cheapest that you can price it, that you're going to have somebody lease it up. You can definitely still do that with shared housing. You can take a house and then rent it by the room on Craigslist for the cheapest price possible. And just to let you know, we're going to have to get into marketing and equal opportunity housing when you market online. But the point of this 1 hour is that we need to break down some of the barriers for the people who are in recovery when they are at your house, because you want cash to be coming in from whoever is paying you. Hopefully that's going to be, in this case, we're going to talk about drug court, because they have a need with opioid addiction. And some of those individuals are veterans. And also the courts will ask you, the judges, I know they asked me, what do we do about schizophrenia? What do we do about OCD? They start asking you these questions. How do you handle this stuff inside of your house? You're dealing with people's lives, and we're going to pay you, let's say, $800 or $900, even up to $1,100 per bed. And we're going to give you the person who we want to be taken care of, right? We expect that you have your things together and that you have a property manager in a neighborhood where the trash is getting picked up and that people will service that house. It's not in such a bad neighborhood that you can't go there, or we don't want to be seen there. So anyways, right, real quick before we go down this population of veterans aged out and all these things, Julie, let's have that conversation that you and I had where you were telling me I couldn't even go in like a nice car because I had a house in a C-class neighborhood, and I felt fine there. But honestly, the probation officers and maybe some other people, they didn't want to drive their car and be seen in that. I know the property managers, a lot of them that I called were like, nope, I'm not even going to do that area.
Yeah. So if you look at the circumstances and you look at the fact that you're not just dealing with renting it to one person who chooses to live there, this person in court is up there and is probably charged with maybe up to like 12 different crimes. It could be they went in a convenience store, used a knife, stole the money, had drugs on them when they got caught. So their list of litany of crimes could be much higher than just a drug charge. So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to look at the situation and know that the environment that you're putting, the environment that your house is in, and that this person is going to be living in, they're not choosing it. It's in a sense, you're choosing to participate in this program and allow people to be in your house. And I think that when we look at that, we think, oh, well, they are going there. Why won't other people, like they're going to have, and I'm going to just preface this right away that, and you're going to talk about the grant and the funding later, is that each of these programs is going to be, like we talk about Katie's House Foundation, and we want a network of people nationwide, right? So if your court isn't Cook County, Illinois, you would want to ask for the handbook that the participants in this court and in this particular conversation we're having is drug court, and see what their requirements are. And a lot of those times there might be a house visit involved, and those house visits are going to be from your either social worker, it could be the probation officer, it could be from some other kind of services that they offer. So like I said, each court has a different type of phase that each offender goes through. They have different requirements to stay in the program, and they have different phases and different, kind of rewards for those people to, reach for or obtain as they go through the program. And eventually you ask, why are they in these programs? If they're, they're actually screened, and they're actually given the opportunity to allow these charges to be dropped off their record. So the chances of them, sometimes of achieving doing that is very high if they're really motivated and say, I don't want to live like this anymore. And the one thing that we can do is we can actually make sure that we're giving ourselves the best income, but at the same time, we're giving somebody the opportunity that wants to get better to stay living there too, if that makes sense. Does that help?
It does help. They're being incentivized to stay in a sober living facility, and the court is paying for them. In this case, if it's a drug court, which is not actually a grant. It's a grant to the medical facility or to the drug court, but that is something that's not like an outside grant that you get online. So there are different kinds of grants, which is why we have to have a grant class later. But I would more consider this a government contract. And the government is basically saying, hey, Mr. Investor, thank you so much for contacting us and for having a boutique shelter available to us, because most people don't even know that they can do this. And if they do know, they haven't put the pieces together in order to understand what's going on, which is exactly why if you're taking this class, you're listening right now to all of this. And so in my real life scenario, what happened at Katie's House Foundation was that, we put up a sober living house, and we immediately reached out to the mayor and some other people on Facebook groups in the sober living community where the city was. And we had so much interest, our email box got full pretty quickly. And so we were screening through who would pay us the most for the beds. And in doing so, we ended up hooking up with a judge who, and I know you have some judges that you work with, Julie. And so the judge was the person who really wanted to make sure that if she gave several $100s per bed per month, whether the bed was full or not, to Katie's House Foundation, she wanted to come and inspect the house. And so she came over and she did an inspection, and she brought her team of about 10 people. And they all had questions, and they wanted to make sure that we had our operation in order. And then they were going to give us this contract for finish out the year, and then we could reapply for the next year and things of that nature. And, there were things that came to light around, they said, well, will you take people who we just arrested and they've been sitting in our cell only for maybe 3 or 5 days, and then we're going to basically tell them that they have to go and live at Katie's house and we're going to pay for it. Will you take them when they've only been sober for 3 or 5 days that we know of, regardless of what the offense is? And our answer to that was, sure, we will, because we're willing to, we have a live-in house manager who has been sober and gone to sobriety recovery 20 times in his life. We felt very confident that he could handle the scenario that would come to him. And the truth was, those people relapsed because they, honestly, we should have done a better job asking the questions that you're talking about, Julie, right? So let's talk about that handbook, because I don't want to discourage anyone from doing this. I want them to know how to make it faster and more effective, because what we
right.
now,
and
let's talk about that.
Let's just dive right into it. So, a little bit about, we were just talking about how, your group came in, your group wanted to basically take these people directly from lockup, right?
Right.
And give them a place to stay outside of lockup, with the hope that they wouldn't drink until their next court date, which is going to be 30 days away. The house manager obviously is your eyes and ears, as your snitch, as you call them.
No, I don't call him that. No, as other people call him.
I'm sorry, the other house participants call them that. But we like that, right? As an investor, I want somebody there that's going to give me the truth, and I want somebody there that's going to tell me exactly what's going on in the house, but I'm not there. Now, cameras will help you, but I don't have time for that. I have way better things I can do with my time and money. So back to the issue at hand, we know that we have something that they don't have a lot of opportunity to have now. So, but we also want to be successful. So for me to tell you to ask for that handbook is going to give you a better idea about what their requirements are and how they can get there. So if I got the handbook from your program that you are just referencing, I would have a little bit of a concern about whether or not these people's rate of success isn't going to be very high, because most of the time, and from my experience being on drug court, is that we're putting them in an inpatient program as soon as possible. And a lot of times, as much as we don't want to spend the money to keep them in jail, we may have to keep them in jail and put them in a separate drug program inside the jail, because that's allowing them to not have access. They can't go outside and get it. They can't. So giving that opportunity to somebody to get this into your house and to go outside and get those drugs again, or the alcohol, right, probability is pretty high. So, that was the real conversation that we had was, hey, I think you should look at their phases and see what phase that is. And if that's a phase 1, I would say I would wait till phase 2 to get them. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the takeaway there for me is find that handbook in wherever the house is. So wherever the house is located, is that going to be a county-wide or city-wide handbook?
That's going to be, usually if the city, certain cities, the major cities are going to have a county courthouse, it's just going to matter. So each district courthouse is going to have their own court. So in Cook County, I'm in District 3, which is the northern part of Cook County. I'm not in the city. If I was in District 1, I would be closer to the city. So I would say that you need to locate the county courthouse that's nearest your property that you're looking at assessing and start there.
So do that, and let's try and make this, by the time that you guys are done with this class today, just this 1 hour, don't feel overwhelmed, feel empowered, because what I'm getting is that you can make quite a bit of money out of this. You can help quite a lot of people. You can help the judge, you can help the county and the city, but in order to do it, efficiently, please go get the handbook. And then also, once you have the handbook, you need to be thinking to yourself, if you have 10 people living inside a 5-bedroom house, and if they're 5 days sober that anyone knows of, that's very different than if they are coming out of detox after 30 days. And it's also different if they're coming out of a detox program for 60 days or 90 days or even 6 months. So those are the things that you're going to want to be okay with, is once you read those phases for that county and you reach out to whoever their grant manager is and they start asking you questions. Like, I will tell you right now, we have at Katie's House Foundation now adopted, right, where we have an outside property manager, which we didn't have when we were talking with the judge, and also with that particular judge. And also we now have an unpaid house president, or, some people might call him a rat, or somebody who likes to just make sure that everything is always on the up and up, which is fine. We like that a lot. We learned that we didn't have to pay them. And if they needed the housing, they will do a better job, because they absolutely need the housing and they want everything to be, if they're one of those people, they just want things to be in good order. But anyway, the difference that we found was that when we paid somebody who maybe had another house, they didn't want it as bad. And so when we are done with this 1 hour, I'm going to give you a short list of kind of, how to make sure that this goes better for you right away to land that contract, and to make sure that you have the people in place who are managing the people who you are letting in, because that is what the judge, I would think, wants to hear. And again, do you want to take people that are just out of the box, or what do you think? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days clean?
Yeah, so normally the phases would be, certain phases would up you from being sober for a certain amount of time. So, and those are the ones that to have the ability to have the probation officer come out and visit them, have the social worker, have those other, either it be an AA meeting that they can attend nearby. They obviously push sponsors. Anytime somebody hasn't gotten, isn't required, well, a lot of times they require them to have a sponsor, but they haven't gotten the sponsor, and that may be something that, the property manager can incorporate into the application that's asking, that maybe some of the questions on your application need to be a little bit more specific. If this is your focus is sober living, that maybe one of the questions be, how long have you been sober for? And if they, obviously don't answer the question, or they don't have a solid number in there, that's your, just like if I have, we talked earlier about housing requirements and the laws that, fair housing, that you're looking at your, being kind of consistent with that. And that if you're taking people in that have no sobriety behind them, then that's what you're looking at. But if you're looking at people that have 30 days, that you're putting that down and you're trying to keep that, some people are going to relapse, and obviously drug court is, we give people chances, we give people, but a lot of times they'll sneak out, they'll test positive, on their drop, and which is a drug test. And they'll test positive on the drop, and then we know about it, and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I got in a situation where I just, I had the opportunity. So keep in mind that you want to try to get these people at a stage where it's going to fit with the rest of the house, because that's the biggest issue. Is you don't want one person, as you'd say, one domino to fall, then the rest of them fall.
Yes. And so pricing is really important as it relates to what you're going to charge based on who you're going to pay to manage the amount of work that might be necessary to watch the people inside the house. And so if you're somebody who's saying you're willing to take people who just got clean, then what I saw where we were at is that they were charging $2,000 entry that was non-refundable. And I've referenced this in the financials in module number 1 for the previous hours of classes, that was actually a level 3 house. And when I'll bring that up before we get off of this training. But when it comes to the National Alliance of Recovery Residences, or NARR, they have 4 different levels. And what I noticed in the county where I was trying to operate that particular house was that all of the houses there were level 3 houses, and they just charged a lot more than I was charging, because they knew what Julie's talking about right now, which is the people who needed the care needed a lot more care than what I realized, but they had already figured it out, and they were charging a lot more upfront, because if those people relapsed, they, essentially wanted to have their money up front. Also, they were busing them around to an IOP program. So that's an independent outpatient.
And if I can interject there, I think too, like one of the things that you can really get out of this course from us is that, you talked about those associations and those types of houses. Those are run maybe nationwide, right? We talk about the Oxford House, and we talk about how because we're individual investors and we're smaller, that we're looking at having our houses to a level where we know what we can handle. We don't have staff on duty that takes care of these kind of things. So I would advise that you really look into the fact that you're just offering the housing portion of it, that you're not actually offering those rides to the outpatient care, and you're not offering certain things. You can offer you can offer little fine details in your houses, but I wouldn't go to the extent of trying to match some of these bigger organizations that have those social services within those houses.
I would agree with you completely. I'm going to bring up the NAR level summary. And so let me share this.
Okay.
So the reason that we're doing this 12-hour class is because I want everyone to know what they're getting into before they go down the path. And go down the path, please. People need you. Just pick the one that works for you and stick with it. And so let's talk about how other people talk about you can get so much money if you have a sober living facility. Let me just tell you, the beds have to be full, right? And you have to price and know what your fees are and know what your expenses are, so that way your pocket gets bigger. So when we look at a level 4 in this model, that's going to be pretty much a hospital, let's just call it. If you look at a level 3, that's going to be where you have a paid person who's normally has some credentials, helping the people that are living inside. And these people are normally involved in an independent outpatient program and are getting bussed around because they don't have either transportation nearby, or they don't have a driver's license or a vehicle, but they still have to go all of these different places to do their drug testing and
and to
meet
stay
with
in the
doctors. Yeah, they have to do so many things. So somebody has to take them around to do all that and make sure that they're doing it. Number 2, that is supposed to be a little bit lighter, where you actually give them drug tests. Now, that might not sound very difficult, but when you have somebody say, I'm not going to take that drug test, the question when you have a house is going to be, okay, well, do you have a house manager who's literally going to pack up their stuff and walk them on the porch and kick that person out? Because that's what happens at Oxford houses, is if you refuse to take a drug test, or if you get voted out by your housemates and you just don't want to go, then they actually use force, or they call the police. Julie, have you ever been involved in anything like that at a sober living facility?
I have never actually had to physically kick anybody out of a house. As we talk about landlords, normally, and I'm sure you touched on this in the beginning of the modules, is that, you have a situation where only an eviction court can throw somebody out. But we're operating a shelter. We know that we operate under different rules. And if you decide, or the person that is running the house decides, the manager, whoever, that person is out, then yeah, the police would show up and the police would say, put your shit on the curb and get out of the house, or you're going to be arrested. Now, we can dive into, do I as a cop want to go in there and get in a physical fight with this guy because he's got his hands clenched on the couch and he's not going to leave? And those are the kind of things that, like, you don't want a phone call that somebody's on the couch and they won't leave. What do you want us to do? And I just think that these are the kind of things that in the beginning, we have to make sure that we have a plan, right? And I think that that's what we're trying to tell everyone is, think about these things in your operating procedures and look at the things that we're giving you and go off of those to try to eliminate some of these problems from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. So the money, right? Everyone wants to make more money. We get that, guys. That's why you're on this training. And yet, what is happening in that house today that somebody might be calling you about? How, you need to put some layers between you and that person who might be getting removed from the house for different reasons. And that's up to you whether or not you want to, and if you live in the area. But if this is an out-of-state operation, that should be fine, and you should have protocols in place. And Julie touched on, the eviction process being different in a long-term versus in, an anti-drug situation. So we'll actually go through the codes around that later on. There are different laws that are applicable to, let's say, an Oxford house, and different funding that's available, because it's not a long-term or short-term or mid-term lease. This is truly, it's not a hospital either, but it's truly a sober living house.
I would call that at will. Right?
At will.
Yeah, it's an at will living situation. And those people, you want to have them, like you said, with the house manager, you want them to want that housing and to want that environment to be good. And I think that, from our experience and from what we've learned and what we are trying to pass on is that we're not trying to make this gloom and doom. We're not trying to make that this isn't, profitable, because it definitely is. It's just that you want to make sure that you have things on your arsenal that you can take care of and have these I guess, like you call it a good neighbor policy, right? You want to have so that those people want that policy and they want others to follow it. And that's where you're hoping that kind of rubs off on the rest of the people in the house, and that they all want to be sober. and that they all hold each other accountable. But you will have to at times decide whether or not you're going to have somebody there that's going to remove those people that aren't fitting in.
Yeah. So I guess that's rule number one for me on this video and doing sober living is make sure the people who are there want to be there. Because if they don't want to be there and you know that, if you get that inkling in one way or another from however you get that information, don't try and force them because they're going to be a pain. And so the minute that they can be exited from the house, I would say let that one go and fill the bed with somebody who actually wants to be there.
But now what if the contract is part of the, part of the drug court? You would need to communicate that to the drug court and tell them why you did that and that you're ready for a new one.
Yeah. And let's talk about that too. The communication to the drug court and having, a probation officer who checks on somebody who's assigned to them or a case manager checking on them. Just so you know, guys, you have to be okay with people rotating in and out of the house. And then also that for me was an important thing was if this person is a problem in the house, who is that point of contact? It's definitely not the judge. Just let me tell you that right now. The judge might be there for a minute in the beginning, but she's not your friend. He's not your friend. They got other things to do. It's somebody else. So you need to know who that somebody else is, right, Julie?
Correct. And that would be found in your conversation with the either the person that has their name as the coordinator on that that pamphlet that you get from the drug court and the contacts that you have. Probation officers change often, and some of the other staff does as social workers, but I would definitely say that there's probably a coordinator and I would get their name and information. And that's the person that I would ask specifically, like, hey, who's going to be the most consistent person that I can communicate with? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be, somebody else on the team that I can communicate these things that, hey, I threw this person out and I had to, and this is why.
Yes. So in our experience, we had a peer coordinator. That was the person who wanted our house so badly, who worked on the judge's team. She and the judge and a bunch of other people came and took a look at the house. And then they had a grant manager who they put us in contact with, who handled, okay, the house looks good. The people seem like they're responsible, meaning Katie's House Foundation and their management. We got to meet them through one way or another. And now let's put them in touch with the money guy. Okay, Mr. Money Guy approves us and says, all right, we've got money for you, Katie's House. Just sign on the dotted line. I'll tell you, we had a hiccup because they wanted us to have a special insurance policy. And, we can get into insurance on a different video, but that is important. We ended up not needing it. And I'm glad because it was very, very expensive. And then, we had the probation officer or the case manager. And so that was actually somebody different. And so, Julie, can you explain the difference between somebody's probation officer and they have to go and get drug tests, right? Which is different than maybe just like a coordinator who's on the judge's team.
Yeah. So typically, I'll just go kind of like from the start of an arrest to how you end up in drug court. So, Johnny gets arrested. Johnny goes in front of the judge for a bond. He either goes to jail or he gets out. Usually these offenders will probably get put into jail because they've got multiple charges or they've got big background. And they're sitting in jail and they get either the state's attorney, the person that's actually for the state trying to press the charges against the person, Johnny, says, this isn't going to fly. You're in trouble. You're deep in it. And then, the public defender steps in and says, whoa, we need to help this person. This isn't because Johnny is just a bad person. It's because Johnny's addicted to drugs. And so they will say, I want to refer this Johnny to drug court. And So then the prosecutor will say, okay, well, the prosecutor for drug court and the coordinator for drug court need to look at this case. And so a lot of times what will happen is during our staffing, which happens before drug court, we may get people's file and they say, this person has been referred to drug court. What do you think? And obviously we, kind of review the file in a very general way to say whether or not we think that that person would be a good fit before they get evaluated, because after that they get another evaluation based on what their issues are, and professionals take a look at them in a little bit more in depth, right? So if we say, okay, yeah, they haven't been in the program, the charges aren't outside of the statute, because there's certain things that have to meet the drug court too, like I'm forgetting the word, but you have to the statutes have to match. Like you have to be falling within certain crimes to fit on drug court too. So with that, then eventually the person comes to drug court and is handed that handbook and is given the information and has to sign that they're going to agree to voluntarily be in the program, and that they're going to voluntarily, answer to the probation officer. Now the probation officer is the person that after the drug court accepts them, they plea them in, which basically means that they're saying, okay, you're agreeing and we're agreeing to accept you in this program. These are the people that you need to check in with. Now, the coordinator that we talked about that met with you, the peer coordinator, that person is the one that basically has that team of people, the social workers, the prosecutors, the state's attorneys, the public defenders, the judge, all on an email saying, okay, this is when we're meeting, this is what's going on, and they kind of keep track of everything. Obviously we all know what the public defender is trying to help Johnny the offender, and then you've got the people that are actually the state trying to say, you're not, you have to stay in this program, you have to do these things. And so the probation department typically does the drug testing. I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench into this, and I'm trying not to confuse people, but there's a lot of times there's what they call pre-trial, and pre-trial services offers certain things. And that would be a lot of times they have to check in with them. This is like before they're actually put in an inpatient program, or before they're put into an actual drug rehab. Okay. So that may only last, that may be because they're in jail and they just get a phone call. It may be they're out on bond and they have to go there and talk to somebody. But after that, once they're pleaded into the program, once everything's good and they get placed into a place, whether it be Katie's House Foundation and you're taking people just directly right out of the jail, or you're taking somebody from a hospitalization type program like you had talked about before. And that's where I guess, like I'm trying to educate everyone on, you want to try to make it so that you're not in a situation where you've got all these people that want to come to your house, but you don't really have the knowledge to know what phase they're in, what part of the court they're in, and those kind of things. So as part of the application process and part of your operating procedures, I would suggest that you kind of are a little bit familiar with that handbook to know, who they're checking in with. So a lot of times I'd say the most common people that they're going to check in with is the social worker and the probation department.
Yes, absolutely. So that social worker was number 4 on my list. Those are the important people. Thank you for that information. The thing that I personally had to get used to was that people would just come, and we actually didn't know much about their background because the drug court, for whatever reason in this particular county, wasn't able to share that information with us.
They're not going to.
Yeah. And so you have to just be okay with that. And you have to be okay with the fact that, I would say that these houses should be in a solid B-class neighborhood, because when they get taken out there by whoever they get taken out there by, if that's their social worker, then they're far enough away from maybe their first neighborhood or their existing neighborhood that like that environment change all by itself hopefully will change a little bit of their behavior. And then if they want to be there because they want to have that felony removed from their record, right, then they will basically comply on their own. To be honest, they're not going to be someone who is fighting the system. What they're going to be fighting is the fact that if they were addicted to drugs versus just being in possession of drugs, it's going to be that they're actually battling addiction, which is why they need the supports in place, like the house flyers that we'll talk about later, which is where the nearest AA and NA meetings are. And then real quick, I want to actually touch on the drug testing a little bit more. So in a sobriety or sober living facility, we actually have the policies we're going to give to you guys. They're very extensive. It should save you quite a lot of time, and then you can modify some of the house rules. I'll tell you that we had 3 different drug tests. So when somebody would come in, they would actually do a urine test with the house manager who's welcoming them in. And then they would do a saliva test if the urine test came back positive. So it was a way to kind of double check. And then we also had a breathalyzer. And those were things that we would regularly use if we needed to. But what I later found out, actually, aside from us wanting to have those things in place, I don't know that the judge certainly never asked us or required us to have those in place, but you would probably want to, is that what I learned from the judge's staff, one of the doctors, he says, oh no, just send them here to the courthouse anytime you want a drug test, because they get their color pulled, in addition to the fact that you can request that they come take a test, and then you can request that they give you their results. So we, the court, won't give you their medical information or their legal records, but you, having a house, can say, in order for you to stay in my house, you have to give me the records. And can you talk about pulling somebody's card and pulling their color, Julie, really quick?
Well, so what the whole idea behind the drug court is, and real quick before I talk a little bit more specifically about the drug tests, I think what I want to try to, extend out to people is that I think even though you weren't required to do that if I was going to reevaluate Katie's house at the location that we're discussing a lot of this about, I would recommend that you actually do the swab test, and that you are just doing that for your own house manager. The saliva test. I'm sorry. Yeah. The saliva test just for your own house manager to be able to, keep track of the fact that, like obviously they know, because they're living that lifestyle too. They know whether or not these people are addicted to something or are acting like they are under the influence of something, right? But I think it has that on the spot, if you want to live here, everybody else sees it, and that you need to be accountable for yourself. And that, is the quick test. It's not invasive. You're not watching somebody pee. You're not doing anything crazy, but you're just putting that little bit of buffer between the fact that, and here's what I wanted to touch on. The most important thing is that, yes, we have requirements for the drug testing. Now, in my court situation, the hardest thing to get back is the results sometimes. So you could, and I would suggest that, and you probably have got them in the operating procedures, that maybe when they go to pay once a month, that they're turning in their drug results to the house manager. And that would be something that they would get from their last drug test. So what happens is the probation department has a color system, and each person is randomly attached a color. And when that color comes up, they know that, okay, the color of the day is green. They have to go and drop, because what they want to do is the element of surprise. They want to give these people no opportunities to know that they get tested in 3 days, that they don't have to drink, or they're not going to do anything for the next 3 days because they can do it on the 4th day. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And I love what you're saying right now. I think that tip that you just gave is worth a lot of money in both materials and frustration, because if we would have only done the saliva test, that would have been so helpful to know that information. What I was previously taught was, well, just have them all kind of a thing. But the thing is, they cost a lot of money. And then also, like you said, implementing a urine test is not a fun thing to do to either. You would not. I didn't let our people watch them urinate in a cup because they're not police officers. But I said you had to stand outside the door. That was the policy.
But they just hide. They get other urine and they hide it. And I mean, it's just it becomes a big issue. So like I said, that saliva test where you're just swabbing and you're just taking a little bit out, that they're not the most highly, they're not the highest confirmed tests, but like I said, it's showing in front of everybody the accountability. It's showing that you are, as a house, requiring that people be sober.
I love it. I love it, because the accountability of just giving them the strip, if they'll take the strip all by itself and swab their mouth, right? Whether it's a cotton swab or whatever, just the fact that they'll do it is half the battle. And then also, if you're getting their test every 30 days and that's clean, you're probably fine. And also, something that's really important to the saliva point is that saliva will catch marijuana within, I think it's 24 to 48 hours is the test.
Now, did the saliva test that you had, did that catch alcohol?
No, that's why we had to have the breathalyzer.
So I would say that would be you could get a portable breath test, and that they're not very expensive. And that's what the cops use on the street when we do a pre-DUI. If we think somebody may have been drinking, that sometimes they can just use the little, and you can use them for actually, you have household ones you can buy, but obviously I would buy, probably a mid-ranged one, but I would, because those two things are just in your mouth. You're not undressing, trying to pee. You're not doing anything. It's just standing there for 5-10 minutes, and you're getting that test out of the person.
Yeah, exactly. And also on the urine with marijuana, you can have the marijuana THC for 30 and 60 days. So that makes it really hard when they say, I've been clean for 21 days and I just got out of detox. And then you give them a urine test and it pops up and they're like, no, I swear. Gets complicated.
Yeah. So like I said, I think some of the frustrations with the court system is that we don't get those tests back in a timely manner. And you think about it, you have a court case every month. So when you actually do have a case come up and you don't have the results, not only is it affecting your living house and your situation, now you're going a whole nother month of not knowing what this person is accountable for, with those two small tests having given in the house. That I think it would be for your residents in the house, as well as the other people living in the house, the peace of mind that they're not anything but sober.
Yeah, I like it. Rule number 2 of this video will be that you need to have a saliva drug test and a mid-range breathalyzer. And although people say that a urine test is the gold standard, it does become complicated with marijuana. And so I personally, having already done this myself in shared housing, I'm with Julie 100%. And then also you still meet the criteria for the National Alliance of Recovery Residents and getting re-inspected when they say, are you guys doing drug tests? The answer would be yes, we are. So moving on, I want to touch on Narcan really quick. And also in a sober living house, what we experienced was that we did health and welfare checks. And so you'll see in our standard operating procedures that if you knock on the door, even the bathroom door, and somebody doesn't respond, then our agreements for only sober living, it says, well, actually for bathrooms, it's for all houses. But basically, if they don't respond, then somebody's going to go in there and see if they have overdosed on some kind of a drug. And so we had Narcan kits, and we still have them, under the sink, in the kitchen, and in the bathroom. I just wanted to bring that up with regard to, right, you're dealing with sober living and
yeah, I mean, that's obviously, they're releasing that now, I think, over the counter. So I would definitely recommend that be something that you put in your house and that you have that available for the other residents.
Yeah. So two other things I want to just impress upon everyone, because I like to be friends with everyone. I feel like I'm a pretty open person, and that is these people that you're dealing with in government, in my experience, they don't want to be friends. They are very busy. They don't need too many emails saying thank you or inviting them to some kind of a get together. They're not going to respond to it. So Julie, what do you say on that note?
Yeah, I guess my advice would be is that, remember, the government people are scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So, getting that grant and getting those people in the house doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything above and beyond, but that, they like to, hear that you offer, these programs. They like to hear that you're, serious about it, and that they have, other things that are going on in their county or whatever they're trying to solve, that it includes, like, I don't know if I want to call it like a whole, what word am I looking for, Kirsten? I mean, you and I just talked about this.
Well, I think it all comes down to making them look good. You have to make them look good without being too much involved with them. Does that touch on it? Because I felt like I needed to do my thing, but ultimately, when you have an issue in the house, or if you have an issue come up, do not take it to them. You're there to make them look good.
Yeah, you're there to solve their whole problem, right? And
Right.
their whole problem could be the fact that their jails are overcrowded, and that you're taking in people, and you're, not only just taking those people in, but you're not making them come back, or you're not giving them the opportunity to, fail, that they want to come back, that they want to stay sober.
Yeah.
So that's a good way of putting it.
So I really quick want to touch on, we have a HIPAA release at Katie's House Foundation that we do stick in for people that are affiliated with hospital to housing or drug related stuff. I don't know that you'll ever utilize this. We, of course, keep people's information private to the foundation or your own operation. And so we will touch more on some of this stuff later on, but this will be included in today's class. And it is state specific, so you might want to pull that up. And then I did want to tell you something that I learned that I thought was really valuable, unrelated to drug court, but definitely related to sober living. And that was people who are coming out of a high-paying detox facility have rich parents or people who love them, or maybe they have quite a lot of money themselves, and they've paid a lot of money to go to a recovery center. And when they get out of that recovery center, if they've been there for 14 days, 21 days, 30, 60 days, the point is that I think everyone on this recording needs to make friends with the people at those recovery centers, and they will want to inspect your house as well. It'll be the same process. And those people are private payers, or they have family who are private payers. And so,
right, you want to get on their referral list. Definitely.
And the same thing applies. If you have trouble in your house or your operation, do not tell them that.
Yeah, don't share too much information. You want to try to, get it under control. If you need to call us and consult with us, that's a possibility too. If you run into a big problem that you haven't really had any experience with and you're looking to solve it quickly, I would reach out to somebody in the Alliance or one of us to answer those questions for you.
Yeah, and do that in advance. So when I say don't share it with them, I mean that, get those potential issues nipped by consulting with Julie probably, or anyone on our team. And then, yeah, we can put you in touch or help you find the resources that you need to make sure that you're heading that stuff off. But even like the small stuff that maybe is just rubbing you the wrong way, it's not even a big thing. Don't overshare with really anyone in this space, to be honest. All right, I'm going to let you all get going. I hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next class.